Hi friends, Pam here. Today I want to talk to you about something different than what I normally speak about. I just finished reading The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and can I tell you how much I loved it. Drop what you're doing, drop what you're reading, and run and get that book right now. That book is for everyone, and why I love it is threefold. But the thing I want to talk about today is, number one, it's aimed at African American young adults. But this is a book for everyone. And why? Because what I want to talk about today is code switching. And do you know what code switching is? It's when people who speak one or more languages switch between one language and another depending on who they're speaking with. You're probably most familiar with it with people of Latinx heritage. Perhaps you'll know that they speak Spanish at home, but when they're in school, they speak English. And they may speak Spanish to other Spanish-speaking people. Well, the same is true for African American teens and children as well. I grew up code switching, but there wasn't a word for it back then. And what code switching is for African Americans is there's a way you speak when you're at home with your family, with your friends, and then there's a way you speak at school. It's a little more proper. It's also considered white. And that's very negative in the African American community. You don't want to walk around acting white, acting like you're out of your station. So you have to learn how to speak to your people the way they want to be spoken to so that you can be accepted. But then when you go to school, you'll get in trouble if you don't speak proper English by your peers and to your teachers, because they'll see you as lower class, ignorant. They might even give you trouble for it. And one of the things I loved in The Hate You Give is that Star, our heroine in the story, she recognized that she was code switching. Of course, she didn't call it code switching, but she recognized that I'm Star Carter when I'm in Garden Heights, and I'm this Star Carter when I'm at whatever the name of our high school was. And she knew that the two could never meet. And she found herself a few times switching over to a different way of speaking at school when she was angered. And I don't want to give any spoilers away here, but for those of you who know about the story, you can imagine why she would be upset. When someone criticized something she had seen, she got angry, and I think she said she snapped. She saw that the Garden Heights Star was coming out, and she had to stop herself and catch herself before that came out, because her friends at school wouldn't understand her. They would look at her different, like, whoa, who are you? So eventually she is able to merge the two, but not without some problems. And in fact, she does get into a fight at school. She deserved to finally just snap on this person who was a so-called friend. There had been lots of racial microaggressions inflicted on her from this friend since they were in elementary school. And since she was now 16 years old, she'd had enough. And she snapped on this girl, and Garden Heights Star came out. But one of the things I want to talk about is that for those of you who don't know what code switching is or had never even heard of it, don't think that people who can do this are any less intelligent than you. In fact, I believe that we are more intelligent because we can speak two languages, just like you can imagine how difficult it is for someone to speak two languages like Spanish and English, Chinese and English, Chinese and French, or whatever. Different parts of your brain are working, and that's very hard to do. Imagine trying to translate from some very rudimentary French or Spanish that you learned when you were in high school and translate it to someone who doesn't speak that language. It's hard. It's super hard, and it's to be commended, people that can do that. So when you see teens and children and they're speaking one way at home and then they're speaking another way at school, they know what they're doing. They know that in order to be perceived as someone who is eligible to get ahead and is worthy in life, they have to be able to speak like how the school wants them to speak, even if it is perceived as being white. Because if white is the majority and these are the people who are in charge of you, you need to give them what they want. And they want proper English. It's not this whole Ebonics nonsense. Okay, I don't know where they came up with that stuff from the late 80s and 90s, but they're two separate languages. And people who can do that are really smart. So kids, if you're listening and you're a code switcher, you can switch back. I commend you because you know where it's appropriate to speak one way and where it's appropriate to speak another way. And that's what I loved about Star Carter in the book. She was so smart and she was so courageous, and she knew who to be when she needed to be. She knew when she needed to be Star Carter from Garden Heights. She knew when she needed to be Star Carter from the high school. And she did it flawlessly. But it took a toll on her because it was hard. She constantly had to work to make sure that the right star came out at the right time. Because if she was at a party in the neighborhood, there's no way she could act like the Star Carter from the high school. She would get beaten up and get ridiculed so bad that it just wouldn't be worth it. And so that's just one of the things I really, really, really loved about The Hate U Give. There is so much I could talk about that book, but that's one thing that just stuck with me, is that code switching. It's a thing. It's valuable. It teaches kids how to behave in certain situations. And I think it's important that we recognize that this is a valuable tool for these kids. They'll be able to use those kind of tools in their future in life as they go on and look for jobs and careers out in the world. They'll learn how they need to behave in certain situations, and I think that's a good thing. So I feel like I'm rambling now. So thanks for listening, and again, get a copy of The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. It's so awesome. And maybe I'll be back another time to talk about something else. What do you think about code switching if you're an African American person? That's all I want to hear from. Thank you. Put your comments down below.